Hey, everybody, and welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. This is Katie Weaver. I'm here with my partner in crime and sister, Kristi Brower. Hello.
Hello, excited to be here with you tonight. I'm excited we're finally starting this new case.
I know we've been promising it. We've had some bumps in the road.
We have had kind of a rough week when it comes to technology, yes.
Yeah, we were going to record this episode Monday night, which is later than normal, but we had been camping, and so we were playing. And
Yes.
then Monday, we had a hellacious storm
Like
come through.
hurricane force
Mhm.
winds. And we live in
Oh,
Idaho,
yeah.
guys.
We don't get that. Tearing enormous trees out of the ground, just tearing roofs off of barns and throwing houses or not houses. Wow. I mean, that would be
Sheds,
crazy. Sheds around, throwing trees
trampoline.
into houses. Yeah, trampolines wrapped around power poles, just
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
Lightning struck a tree around the corner from my house and it exploded and transformers exploded and the house lit on fire and it knocked out all the power in my neighborhood. It was
Mhm.
really scary.
Mhm. Yep. We didn't have power for many hours where I live, and some of the people around me, I mean, literally people that were a block from me didn't have power for about 36 hours. Now,
Yeah.
luckily, mine came back after about 5 hours, so I counted
My
myself super
brother-in-laws just
lucky.
got their power back at 2 o'clock today, and today
Yes.
is Wednesday, and this
Mhm.
was, Monday night. So, yeah, there was no
Yeah.
way we could record because we couldn't even keep our power on, and the internet kept coming and going, and everything was crazy.
Well, and you guys should have heard it. The
Oh,
way the wind was tearing at the trees in the
it was
house and
unbelievable.
wow. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
So that kind of slowed us down. So last night we sat down to record and my computer had a complete and total meltdown. So it again didn't happen. So we just are trusting that tonight's the night.
Tonight is the night. We are getting this started, dang it.
Yes. So this will be at least a two-part series, maybe three. We're not quite sure.
We'll
We're
see.
not sure. We've puzzled about how to break this up. It definitely has to be more than one episode. So
Yeah,
should we tear into it?
let's do it.
All right. This happened in Rexburg, where I live, where we grew up, just like the Vallow case. And
Mhm.
though this is a solved crime, kind of, we'll have some insights on all of it along the way. This happened a while ago, but starting in about 1997, police started getting calls from family members requesting welfare checks to the home of David and Lorraine Kaneko and their daughter Laura. They had
Yeah.
an adult daughter who lived at home, and they the police went multiple times, and what they discovered was this family lived in a single wide trailer on the property of Lorraine's parents, her elderly parents, and that Lorraine and Laura were not leaving the house at all.
Right.
And multiple times when they came to the door, they would tell the police, "This is how we have learned to live. We just want to be left alone. We're
This is how we
fine."
have learned to live. Several police
Mhm.
officers quoted that.
Mhm.
And that is such a weird thing to say,
Mhm.
That just
Yeah.
tells you right there, something is off. What do you mean this is how you've learned to live?
Yeah, it's a really strange statement. And so anyway, and this is what's very strange about this, because this was a religious family. They were Mormons, as
Mhm.
is most of this town, and they weren't going to church at all. And just literally, these women were never leaving the house.
Yeah.
Now, David, the husband and dad, he worked at the INL. The INL is the International Laboratory
Idaho
that
National Lab.
Idaho, I don't know, it's this place.
Yeah.
And anyone around here knows. I mean, this is a place where lots of super secret stuff is done. In the 60s, they were testing nuclear submarines in the underground watershed. There's been all
Right.
kinds of top secret stuff happen at
It's
the
a nuclear
INL.
reactor, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nuclear reactor. There's a lot of nuclear storage going on out there. And it's just a highly classified place. And a lot of people around here do work there and they get bussed in.
Mhm.
It's, it's way out on the desert, and if you pull onto their land, they will be on you instantly.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you can't go out there at all
Mm-mm.
without the proper clearance, but most people
It's
in
kind
these
of an
areas,
Area 51 kinda place,
it
like,
really
huge
is.
fences and big signs and
Mhm.
threatening stuff, yeah.
Well, and enormous buildings that go many, many, many stories under the earth.
Yeah.
I know someone who's a guard in one of those buildings who works like 50 stories below the earth or some crazy thing. It's really something. But
Yeah.
anyway, and that's maybe, lots of stories for another day, but David worked there, and he worked in nuclear science.
Well, yeah, he trained naval recruits,
Mhm.
who were gonna be living on nuclear submarines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really weird, interesting,
Mhm.
totally top secret stuff.
And he had very high level clearance out there.
Yes.
So one thing that happened was that as Laura and Lorraine had visited with the police a few times, they said that in the last year he had not slept at home 64 times. And they were kind of puzzling over that. It was an interesting dynamic, obviously.
Yeah, well,
And
and they were journaling everything, so they
mhm,
knew it was exactly 64 times. They journaled things as literal as what time the furnace turned on and what time the furnace turned off.
mhm,
And so they had all these records of just completely banal things, including when he didn't come home.
mhm. So the police, in trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this family, things just don't seem right.
Yeah,
But they didn't really have anything they could do. But they did make an inquiry into where was David going? Why wasn't he sleeping at home? Which actually opened up an espionage investigation
yeah,
against David that didn't bear any fruit, but it did drop his clearance level a
did.
bit. Yeah.
Well, and it turns out that at that time, he had been reprimanded at work for working too much overtime and for sleeping out at the site at
Mhm.
INL. And
Mhm.
apparently, that is a thing that can be done occasionally, but he was doing it way too much.
Mhm.
And so during that time, it was likely that that's where he was most of the time,
Mhm.
although no one knows for sure where he was
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah. And it's not really pertinent to the case. It's just kind of some insight into that things were strange. Things weren't
Yeah.
right in this home. Lorraine's family lived all around them. Her parents, her brothers,
Yeah.
they all lived nearby. They all went to the same ward in their church, and they literally hadn't seen Lorraine and Laura in years.
Yeah.
And so things were just very strange, and obviously not going well, as we
Right.
know.
They would accost David when he got off the site bus
Yeah.
and ask him what's going on with them. Where are they? Can they see them? And
Yeah.
he would just always put them off that they didn't want to see anybody. They didn't want to have anything to do with anyone because it was
Mhm.
really their only opportunity to speak to him because they wouldn't
Yeah.
even answer the door.
Yeah. Yep. So finally, they went for yet another welfare check, and this time they burst into the house. Nobody was home. They knocked. They got nothing. They went in. And what they found was in a bedroom. Well, what they found was the most horrific smell you can imagine,
Yeah.
and hundreds of air fresheners hanging all over the house, and multiple air freshener or air purifying machines. Now, this is a single wide trailer, bear in mind.
Yeah.
Uh,
Small, small space.
Small, and many fans blowing, and a horrific smell. And when they investigated further into the trailer, what they discovered is that in one bedroom that was sealed up, in one bed, were the badly decomposed bodies of Lorraine and Laura.
Yeah.
They were both dead.
Now, they did have a warrant when they went in that time. They had gotten a
Hmm.
warrant to forcibly take Laura and Lorraine out of the house for psychological evaluations.
Hmm. The family was convinced something was wrong,
Yeah,
convinced, but they couldn't prove it, and they had a hard time getting any help.
yeah.
But yes, finally, warrants had
They're
been
adults. They,
issued.
they can say, "I don't wanna have anything to do with anyone," and nobody can stop that, you know?
Yeah. So here we are. There's two dead bodies in this house
Yeah.
and that have been dead for some time. Now they believe that Laura died first, correct?
Yes.
So Laura died first, and within a couple of years, mom died.
Yeah, they think May or June of 2001 is when Laura died,
Hmm.
and then in February 9th, I think, of 2003. For some reason, they have the exact date on Lorraine, but not quite on Laura.
Hmm. Well, that must have come from David. So,
Yeah, what little cooperation he gave.
yeah. So he had been living in this home with these decomposing bodies for years.
Yeah,
And people, of course, as you can imagine, were shocked. Uh, their families were horrified and devastated.
yeah,
They were going about all their daily business, passing this home every day, living next door, and those women had been dead in there for years.
yeah,
So the bodies, of course, were removed for autopsies. And the autopsies came back totally inconclusive.
yeah,
There was no injury to either of them. There was no poison that they could detect. I mean, they were badly decomposed,
yeah,
but there wasn't any obvious cause of death. And so the cause of death was ruled malnutrition and sickness.
yeah.
That's as good
Just
as it got.
random sickness.
Hmm. So then they ordered a second set of autopsies
Yeah,
because how could that possibly be the case, right?
right, right.
And
Same result, and they pulled in a really famous, anthropologist to do
hmm
these, because the first, pathologist had not had any experience with decomposed bodies. Because guys,
hmm
this is Idaho. This was in the early 2000s. Our community had never dealt with a case like this before.
no.
So they bring in this really famous guy. He's the same, anthropologist who did the autopsies on Saddam Hussein's sons, weirdly enough.
Hmm.
And he couldn't find anything else either. He didn't add anything to what the original pathologist had said. There was just
Hmm.
no way to prove anything beyond malnutrition and potentially some kind of illness.
Hmm. The women were tiny
Yes.
already. They were both tiny, tiny women, Chinese ladies. And
Mhm.
they essentially, it kind of appeared as though maybe they starved themselves to death.
Mhm.
Uh, and yet, why? What? It was a really, really crazy thing. And so, the police were determined,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
prosecutor's office was determined to find a cause of death, figure out what the hell this horror was all about, and hold David accountable.
Right.
And they were having a fairly tough time doing it, considering that they had no causes of death. I mean, obviously, there are some obvious charges for not reporting their deaths and for
Mhm.
mishandling their remains, but they wanted more. They
Yeah.
wanted some justice or something to really, I think, for their families.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And but one thing they discovered, the house was a horrific hoarder's den.
Yes.
There were empty boxes, like empty cereal boxes, stacked clear to the ceiling.
With the
There were
dates they've been eaten written on them. Everything
mhm,
with a date on it.
everything with a date. There were many bags of candy with a note of when this bag was opened, how many pieces were eaten, and then it was just stuffed away.
Yeah.
There was used toilet paper in
Yeah.
bags.
Yeah.
You can only imagine how
They kept
horrific the house
everything.
was.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they kept everything. They labeled everything.
They did. It took the police 9 days to pull everything out of this house and catalog it.
Mhm,
And what I read is that they even got, like, secretarial staff and jail staff out there with the police to try to help them because it was such a
mhm,
massive job.
mhm. Yeah. Well, and because the house itself was just such a grody,
Oh,
horrible,
so bad.
after what was happening in there. And so and people were just stunned. I remember this so well.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember that house. It is out on what's called the Salem Highway or close to it.
Not far from Chad
Interestingly, the
Daybell,
same
actually.
highway Chad Daybell lived
Yeah,
on. Yeah. Uh, a few miles apart, but yeah.
yeah.
Note to self. Well,
Right. What the
anyway,
hell's going on back there?
the house isn't there anymore.
No.
It was destroyed.
Yeah,
Uh,
there was no saving that, I don't think.
no, it's been gone for a while, but I did drive over there and look at the lot where the house used to be. There's nothing there now, but uh, so there was a funeral. The Sakota family. Lorraine was her maiden name was Sakota, and their family is well known in this area. The
Oh,
Sakotas
yeah.
are very well known, well respected, wonderful people,
Yeah,
and they, of course, did hold a funeral immediately for Laura and for Lorraine,
yeah.
and put a beautiful, beautiful bench memorial in the Rexburg Cemetery for them.
Mhm.
And their obituaries indicate that due to the fact that it's an ongoing investigation, there is no timeline on when the bodies will be released for burial.
Right.
That's what was released at the time, of the discovery of their deaths, and it was much later,
Yeah.
much later.
Well, they
So
did 2 autopsies and,
yeah,
they did a bunch of stuff before they could release the remains.
yeah. I hadn't, and I have to say, the reason that I keyed into doing this case, I don't know why I hadn't thought about it before, either of us, but
Yeah.
I was visiting with a friend who was a police officer here in Rexburg at that time, who was involved with this investigation, and she had said to him, "I'm so surprised that Tammy Daybell's autopsy hasn't come back. It's just taken so long." And he said, "Oh, no." He said, "Remember the Kaneko case?" He said, "Those autopsies took an extremely long time." He said, "Don't be surprised. Some of these things just take a really long time."
Sure.
And she told me that, and I went, "Oh my God, the Kaneko case. How have we
Right?
not discussed this?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that the police, sorry, that was a bit of whiplash, but
That's alright.
one of the things that the police discovered in the house was thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of journals.
Yeah.
Mostly Laura's, we think, but mom's as well, that they were
Mhm.
both keeping, obviously detailed notes of their day to day everything, but also of dreams and premonitions and beliefs. And they had a lot to sort through there in order to, start trying to put something together in a case to try to understand what in the world happened to these women.
Yeah. Well, it
And
wasn't like
so,
David was giving him any help.
no, he wasn't. He wasn't. He didn't necessarily obstruct, but he didn't help them either. You
Mm,
know, he didn't try very hard to help them understand what was happening.
no.
So, what they found in the journals, what they were able to piece together was that the family believed that Laura was supposed to marry a man who would become the prophet or the president of the Mormon Church, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints.
Right.
And Laura and Lorraine, and I think David too, I mean, he was a part of this,
Mhm.
that they, in preparation for this man to come into Laura's life, that they were to be following a very strict, basically purification process
Mhm.
that uh, sounds a whole lot like starving themselves to death.
Yeah, it really does. Like, that was they were intentionally depriving themselves.
And then, as both women died in the house, there was an indication from David that the reason that he had not given this information over to the authorities is that this was a part of the plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
The plan, you know.
Boy, you talk about some shared mental illness in a family. Good
Yeah.
heavens. Shared
So,
delusion.
yeah, shared delusion. And so he hadn't reported and was just letting these bodies, decompose in his house that he was eating in, sleeping in, living in, because it was all part of this master divine plan for his daughter, who was dead, to
Yeah.
marry a man who was going to be the prophet. That's, I'm sure, very simplified. we have made some public records requests. We are hoping to get a hold of the criminal complaint and see what else we can get from court transcripts because
Yeah,
we really, really want to understand these journal pages better. We don't know if we're going to be able to get anything. We've been running big circles trying
we
to come up
have.
with the information we're looking for. So we're trying. And if
Yeah,
we can come up with more of that, you guys, of course, will be the first to know. One thing we found in researching this case is a lot of it is just the same information regurgitated by multiple news sites. We've found a couple of, news sites that veered away from the norm, but a lot of them they're pretty much the same. And I'll tell you why, or why I believe that to be the case, at
mhm,
least in this area, is that this case was treated with a lot of sensitivity, which is fine. I don't have a complaint with that.
sure,
One thing we've seen in this area before, though, when there have been some suspicious things or even a couple of pretty horrifying deaths, there is a real circling of the wagons
yeah,
to protect, I think, the church,
mhm.
the families.
'Cause there was this weird component of their
Mhm,
delusion got all mixed up with their Mormon beliefs, sound
mhm,
familiar? Sound like any other case we're talking about?
mhm. And so it seems as though perhaps information was quite limited in order to keep that curtain closed.
Yeah,
And when you look at the news stories, you really go, wow, really not a lot of new info. I searched this
mm-mm.
case on Reddit because Reddit a lot of times will have stuff that you don't find anywhere else. This
Right.
case isn't even on Reddit. I couldn't find anything. I
That is
couldn't
so
believe it.
wild. This
Yeah.
case has stayed under wraps. Maybe we're the first true crime to cover it, I don't know, but I guess
I
having lived in the community when it happened, I mean, I remember and a lot of it I think was out of respect for Lorraine's family.
yeah.
Just, they had battled forever, 10 years or more probably with this
Yeah.
situation. And, what they said is that the isolation was David isolating Laura and Lorraine.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
they believed.
Mhm.
But then you get into all this other stuff that they have going on, and you really wonder, was
Yeah.
it actually David isolating them?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll never know, but it does make me question it because they were so fervent in their belief that I really think that there was more to this, that it wasn't just him.
Yeah.
Not saying that
Agreed.
he wasn't negligent because he was
Oh, yeah.
definitely negligent, but I don't think it was just him controlling them. I do honestly feel because he was going to work every day. He
Right.
was going to work
Right.
at the site where he had to ride a bus for 2 hours, like,
Right.
they could have left the house, they could have visited family, they could have done all kinds of things because he was a
Mhm.
long ways away,
Yeah.
and he didn't,
No.
you
They
know?
also wouldn't answer the phone.
No.
No one could call them because the phone would just ring. They wouldn't answer the phone. Some people had said that there had been a falling out in the family, and that's why they weren't coming around. But that's really not what the indication that they gave was.
No, and I don't know if maybe, there was some falling out over this belief from Laura that some of the family was like, "That's a little crazy, I don't know," and that
Mhm.
could have been, but they were actively staying away. They were living on the same property as
Mhm.
Lorraine's parents. I mean, they could have walked
Right.
out the door and walked a few feet to visit, and they didn't for
Yeah.
more than a decade.
Yep. But also they wouldn't answer the door. I mean, I know some of you guys are like, "Why didn't the family just go over there?" They did.
Yeah.
Many times. Many, many times they knocked on the door over and over and over. They called. Again, they would wait for David to get off the bus and grab him, and they just wouldn't give them anything.
No, it was just a
The
brick wall.
woman would just yep, the blinds were shut, the doors were locked. They wouldn't answer the door. They wouldn't speak to them through the door. They wouldn't give them anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Even when the police came on a couple of different occasions, they wouldn't answer the door, and they had to yell that if they didn't open the door, they were coming back with a warrant, and
Mhm.
that's what eventually got them to open the door and speak to the police a couple of times.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just still though, this is the way we have learned to live.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
creepy, man.
This is the way we've learned to live. Yeah. So that is, in a nutshell, the first part of this case. I mean, do we
Yeah.
want to go deeper tonight or do we want to wait?
I think let's wait. We'll share kind of what happened because David did face criminal charges, and we'll talk about
Mhm,
how that happened, and also
mhm,
some evaluation done of Lorraine and Laura based on their writings.
mhm,
And we can talk a little bit about that and about how they had some help from some FBI profilers and a few things. So we can
mhm.
talk about kind of what the resolution was
Yeah,
in our
well,
next
we'll share
episode.
more about who they were,
Yeah.
who Laura was, and who Lorraine were. They were both well-educated women. Laura was absolutely brilliant,
Yeah.
and, well, I believe Lorraine was as well, and obviously David was as well. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, he
3
was.
very intelligent people. So, that's yeah, we'll come back in the next episode and detail all of that to try to help you guys, and us understand what in the world went wrong here with
Yeah.
this family that this happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, there you go. Those are the bones.
Yep.
That's a terrible pun, and I actually didn't mean it at all.
Oh,
But
good. Yes, it is.
But there it is. So that's the case. That's what happened. And again, in the next episode, we'll flesh out a little. Oh my God, I did it again. In the next episode, I feel this is bad. I might have to bleep those out. Uh, in the next episode, we will bring more light
Share.
to, yes,
There's a
who they
safe word we can
were.
say.
Yes, what the profilers said, what the mental health evaluations were, based on all of their writings. And again, if we can get a hold of the public records that we're asking for, we'll have more to share on that too. So,
Yeah, definitely. And we can
and if
talk
you're
about.
local and you remember this case and you want to chime in, I'd love to hear
Please
your.
do. There's so
Yeah,
little information out there. Researching it has been challenging.
it has. It really has. So, all righty. Well, as you know, you're either listening to us on our podcast or you are watching us on YouTube. We had two big things to celebrate this week. We we crossed the 2,500 subscribers threshold here
Yay.
on YouTube, which was a big accomplishment for us. Very exciting. And on our podcast, we have now had over 10,000 downloads here
Yeah.
since we
Woo!
started this just in February. So
So
that is a
thank you
number.
all for that. That's
Yeah.
on all of you listening. We really appreciate you.
We love it. So thanks you guys very much. We do have a Patreon if you're interested in supporting us that way and getting a little extra content from us. We appreciate it very much. You can
Yeah.
find that over at Patreon, True Crime Paranormal. But of course, if you're here on YouTube, please like or dislike, comment, share, what you do. We
Yeah.
appreciate that a lot. It helps us a lot. So
It is.
we'll be back and we will be, there's some things happening in the Vallow case this week. So we will be coming up with those things as well. So
Yeah.
you can watch for those. So thanks you guys so much for being here. This is Kristi and Katie with True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. Take care.